Hi, buddy. Andy here again, day 4 of what I'm now calling the coronavirus diaries. And I thought I'd move around a little bit, give you a slightly different viewpoint as we go through these, which are probably going to become a daily event. And yesterday I started talking about the figures, the deaths and the cases, and that in case anyone's interested, and also keeping that sort of track of it for future posterity, which I shall come on to in a minute. So yesterday, Friday, the amount of deaths in the UK unfortunately rose to 181, which is the highest figure so far per day. The amount of deaths now altogether is 759, unfortunately. The amount of cases went up considerably to over 14,500, but as I mentioned before, that's just because those people have been tested. I know they're rolling out more and more tests, but this is the problem elsewhere, as I mentioned. Even the government admit that the amount of cases are probably considerably higher. But one of the things I was going to mention is how this is affecting us. When we're in this sort of UK sort of semi-lockdown, it's not a real lockdown as other places have got. It's changing the way that we live our lives, something that I'm sure we'll be talking about throughout other videos, and I know other people are talking about. It's only been under a week here, but it's already starting to feel sort of fairly normal in a way, which is quite scary. It's changing the way we do things. And one of those is actually seeing your sort of loved ones, your mother, your father, your kids, or, even your partner sometimes, because if you weren't living with your partner, as I fortunately am, before all this started, technically you shouldn't be seeing them now, which is a real thing for people. And brought it home to me yesterday, actually, because my son was out with his wife going out for their sort of daily form of exercise, went for a walk on the seafront as we'd done ourselves earlier on. And how lucky are we to actually live in the place where we can go to the sea and sit on the beach and sort of calm yourself down a little bit. It's always a very sort of soothing atmosphere sitting on the beach, especially in the weather that we've had. So my son said, well, he got my birthday present. It was my birthday a couple of weeks ago. Thank you. And so he said, right, I'll bring your present round. But of course, he had to leave it outside. He couldn't bring it in because we couldn't meet up. So he told us when he was coming. So we saw him outside the window, open the window, and you're having this weird conversation out of a window to your son. And, thankfully, he actually lives in the same town as me. My daughter lives 15 miles away. Julie's having that problem with her kids because one lives in London and the other one lives in Bristol. We're in Hastings on the south coast, so there's a distance. But what we're doing, actually part of a family tonight, so we're actually going to do one of these, Zoom. You've probably heard of this chatting app that you can use now, which has been used normally for like businesses holding conferences and meetings. We're actually going to have a sort of a quiz, a family quiz tonight. So people are coming up with all these weird and wonderful ideas of what you can do. But as I said before, out of adversity comes different things. And one of the things with this is I've started doing this, and again, as other people are doing daily vlogs or daily updates, whatever that you want to call them. It's what we used to do back in the day. And I remember back in the day, I used to call this like a sort of a digital memory bank, because we were putting things down there which are still there. My videos, as I said, I started doing this in 2006. My videos are still there if I want them to be. And they're still on the site. 800 or something videos are there. So you can look back, as I do sometimes, the travel diaries that I've done by myself and with Julie as well. You can look back on them like they're like photographs, they're memories that are still there. And that's one of the reasons that I'm sort of putting out the figures here, and I know other people are doing the same, because you're actually creating like a little diary. So many people have done diaries. I mean, obviously some of the most famous ones, I mean, Samuel Pepys over here in the UK was writing a diary in the 1600s, and during that time, in 1665, he was cataloguing, sort of diarising, if that's the right word, the plague that hit London and obviously the UK and a lot of the world as well, and the Great Fire of London that followed on from that. We have those memories. We have almost like a newspaper report because of what he put. I'm sorry, I've just been out for a walk, so I'm still quite hot. And we've got that record, which you might not have had before. And before that, Daniel Defoe of Robinson Crusoe fame also wrote a diary or a journal, the Journal of the Plague Year of 1665. Once again, it's one of those things that you can look back on. And obviously the most famous one, is the Diary of Anne Frank, which was, as you probably aware, was written during the Second World War. I'm not trying to compare what we're doing here and what we're suffering with what she and so many other people went through. But it's now a historical document that you can read and look back on and realise of what other people have gone through. I've heard people sort of saying about how they're bored now and it isn't this bad. It's nothing compared to what other people have gone through, either back in the plague years of 1665 or obviously the Second World War and what Anne Frank's family and so many others went through at the time. But there's a similarity in a way, as I said, and not that sort of, degree of severity, if you want to put it that way. And actually, we were lucky enough to go to Amsterdam. I've been there a couple of times in the last year, actually. But we went to Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam, and if you ever get the chance to do it, please go and see it. It's an amazing place. Very touching, and it just really brings it home as to what that family went through and how they had to live in the circumstances that they did at that particular time. Obviously, you can read the diary and find out, but it really brings it home when you're actually there and you can see where they lived, and such a small area. And the fact that during the day, because they were basically next to a shop or something, they had to keep quiet as they possibly could. We don't have that situation here, so comparing what we're going through with what other people have gone through isn't really correct at all. But it is a tear. It is something that's completely different. It's something that's completely new for all of us, something that we're all going to have to get used to, I suppose. But it would be good to do this type of thing. Talking about things is always a good thing, I think. So putting these things out there is always a good thing. And as I said, you can look back on this a while. Funny enough, I was talking to my kids on WhatsApp, as a lot of people doing, and saying, this is one of those things you can be able to tell your grandchildren about. Like my mother talks about the times that she spent during the Second World War here in the UK, and I know a lot of older people talk about that. We've been talking about the Blitz spirit over here, and that they had rationing and all those types of things. Well, every sort of generation seems to have this period, and it's not a bad thing to go through sometimes, to make you reevaluate your life and other people's lives, and what you hold dear and what maybe isn't quite so important as what you might thought it was, but maybe that's something to come back for. So either I'd recommend anybody to do this. Write a video. I know people are putting posts on Facebook, but try and do something that's a little more permanent. Maybe write something down. I've seen people doing that. Write a blog or something, because even taking photographs or something like that of what every single day or parts of your week, because you're going to look back on this in times gone by and wonder what you did. Actually, did this really happen? Was it really as bad as what it was? So anyway. There's a thought for you. So the diaries are important. That's why I intend to try and keep this up, and I hope other people do as well. But maybe you want to give it a try. Anyway, I shall speak to you again, hopefully tomorrow. Goodbye.